Coming up today on Zestology, pushing yourself outside your comfort zone even when you don't really want to, and how good it feels afterwards, and how to not sit down all day. It is possible. Hi, I'm Tony. I'm an author, presenter at Sky Sports, and years ago I went to the jungle and got ill. Very ill. So this is my podcast adventure to find more energy. It's packed with biohacking, science, health tech, supplements, and some of the most well-known experts on the planet.
This is something I spent 4 months of my life doing with electrodes glued to my head so that you can do a lifetime worth of meditation.
Decide what you don't give a fuck about, which is something you don't care about.
Some of it gets quite out there.
I had some stem cells sent up to my house that I had stored, and then I injected myself with mannitol.
And we even hack hangovers.
Alcohol is poisonous. So is water and oxygen in the wrong dosage.
So that's my podcast, Zestology. Live life with energy, vitality, and motivation. Yeah, welcome back. Today's podcast guest is Dean Karnazes, who has been on twice before. Ultra MarathonMan, famous the world over for his marathon feats, and an extraordinary individual who clearly has got some genetic advantages. There's definitely something genetic going on, but he is also an incredible runner, and he helps himself, great diet, doesn't sit down all day, as you'll hear, and pushes himself outside his comfort zone. So that is the topic of today's podcast. We are looking at how to replicate some of Dean's craziness, even if you don't feel like you've got the same genetic advantages, or in my case, you've got a history of slightly dodgy knees. This podcast was recorded before Christmas, so you will hear a mention of Christmas parties and boozing too much. And thankfully now it's January and I'm feeling much better. And it's remarkable how much better I feel, actually, having just refocused on diet and just given myself some space and time at the beginning of the year. Anyway, here he is, Dean Karnazes on Zestology. Okay, really excited because Dean Karnazes is back. Dean, how are you?
I'm couldn't be worse. It's the world has been put in a different place since we last spoke, but it's good to be back on with you.
Yeah. It's been such a strange time, and obviously last time we saw you in London. What have things been like for you over the last year and a half?
It's been rough. I've incredible wanderlust, and so much of my life is predicated, and my livelihood is predicated on, attending events, primarily sporting events. And these are large participation events, like a marathon and so forth, or an ultra marathon. And that just literally went away, Tony. I mean, it evaporated into the ether with COVID. We just started coming out of it, and I've been participating in a couple of events recently. I've been doing a bit of traveling, but now we have the new Omicron variant, and who knows what's going to happen. Moving forward.
God, I know. Yeah. Listen, by the time this goes out, because this is going to go out at the start of 2022, I am very hopeful that things will be better, not worse. But I can't predict that. I don't have a crystal ball. Yeah.
It's funny. I always like listening to old interviews, during the COVID era, because, I've made some predictions that have been so wrong. I thought this COVID could be like the bubonic plague, and we're just, the humanity was going to disappear. Yeah. So that was not quite as dramatic as what I had predicted.
No, thankfully. Well, exactly. Yeah. But are you still finding, because I remember that, as well as obviously the fact you travel so much with events, you also do a lot of work traveling around, a lot of ambassador work. You do a lot of work in a lot of different areas, and a lot of it does involve travel, doesn't it?
Yeah, and a lot of it went virtual, like everyone has, and it's just not the same. I mean, it's that dynamic that you have face to face is lost. But the world, I think, is doing what the best we can with what we've got. Yeah.
Are you finding that now? I mean, you mentioned the Omicron variant. Are you finding that now things are getting back to normal?
Yeah, in fact, I spent a month in Australia, although that was anything but normal. That was a 2-week quarantine on entry in a very restrictive travel, and we were held in like an isolation bubble. All the 8 athletes that participated, so that was not quite normal. And then I just got back from a trip to Greece, and Greece was pretty much opened up. I mean, you had Europe, I think, is a little further ahead than we are as far as requiring your vaccination proof. Pretty much everywhere you went, but that felt really good. I did an event here in San Francisco I put on a couple weeks ago, and that went off without a hitch. And now with Omicron, a lot of the events that were scheduled for this month are closing again.
Oh no! Oh goodness! And yet you're in California, aren't you?
I am.
Which I think I sort of, from listening to various podcasts and chatting to various contacts of mine in the health world, I know that California's been very strict in its response to COVID, so it's probably quite restrictive there. Yeah,
I mean, there's I think it runs the gamut. I think Greece was pretty much wide open, and Australia was very much even more restrictive than California. I mean, they were completely locked down. So I think the way different nations are dealing with the pandemic is kind of scattershot. Like there's no consistent global rules for this thing.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk to you about Greece in just a second, but before that, obviously, one thing very positive that's happened in the last year is your book has come out, and I was really excited about sort of reconnecting, and we've been chatting and setting this up for ages, but I've enjoyed your writing so much and been so inspired, and I think it's fair to say that I wouldn't necessarily have considered your book, the first book that I read of yours, had I not been interviewing you a few years ago. So I'm very glad that I sort of widened my sphere of influence. But tell us about the new one that came out this year.
Yeah, it's called The Runner's High. In fact, I'll show you a copy.
Yeah, I love the cover. I think it's a very, very strong cover. I'm a bit of a book cover geek, and I think it's an excellent cover.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I don't take any credit for that. I mean, my publisher.
It's good. It's strong colors.
The thing with the book that has really surprised me is how many non-runners have read it and have written to me and said, "Wow, that was amazing." Yeah. And I'm not even a runner. I used to be a runner, but I'm a natural storyteller. I'm Greek, 100%, and the Greeks were storytellers throughout history, and it's a book where, I when I write my books, I try to engage the reader and make it very propulsive. And this is one that, people say to me, I read it in one sitting. Like I was going to read a chapter or two. One guy said I was going to read a chapter or two and before bed, and 6 hours later I finished the book. And then he's like, I got out of bed, I had to go running. So
that's great.
I wanted to try to somehow live up to the title of giving the reader a runner's high, because I know you're a big reader, and so am I. And if you read a good book, it kind of gives you that same high, right? You're energized, you're kind of in that state of bliss. So that was my intention in writing this book.
Yeah, I think the best non-fiction books read like fiction. They jump off the page like that, and that's the goal to aspire to. That's what I aspire to with my writing as well, actually. Yeah. Yeah,
and I think that I think with my books, at least, when people read them, the typical comment I get is, "Wow, that's not what I was thinking it was going to be." I think they kind of pigeonhole the running genre is kind of all the same. It's all about someone running, and my books, running is almost a backdrop to broader life lessons and broader stories.
Yeah, well, that's certainly what I thought. And of course, one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about the book today is the fact that in March and April 2020, what happened? None of us were allowed to go anywhere to gyms, and the amount of runners who hit the streets and the pavements and the paths around here just multiplied by so much. And we used to enjoy going out. There's a lot of different running styles that emerged at that time, but so many more runners than there used to be because they couldn't do anything else.
That's been a global trend. The number of runners globally has increased dramatically, and it's interesting because a lot of the folks, when they're surveyed, they don't identify as being a runner. Like, I'm not one of those runner people. I run now, like I started running, but I'm not a runner. And it'll be interesting to see, moving forward, how many of them will become runners.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, hopefully some of it will stick. Tell me a bit more about the book then and the runner's need.
Yeah, I mean, the subtitle of the book is Older, Wiser, Slower, Stronger. And I think that kind of sums up, my running at this point. I mean, it sounds crazy to say this, but I've been doing this for, God, half a century. How am I still holding up? My first book was kind of a coming of age book, learning about this crazy world of ultra marathoning. And, 5 books later, this is kind of a sequel to that, where I talk about, after all these years, am I still running? Am I still passionate about it? Am I still chasing dreams? What has happened in those years since that first book? So it brings people along on the ride. I think a lot of people, it's interesting to read about another person's reality. And certainly my reality is much different than most. And I try to give the reader a glimpse of, what my life is like. And it's unusual. It's very atypical. So I think people enjoy that.
And there were 2 specific areas I wanted to ask you about. And the first is sort of aging and exercise and how you're experiencing aging, because obviously, I mean, this podcast has been going about 8 years now, Dean. And so my audience is aging with me. And it's something that we start to think about a little bit more, as I'm sure you have, going from, as you say, running for 50 years, what was it you're saying? Slower and stronger. How do you consider the aging process through the lens of your fitness and your exercise?
I've adapted as I've matured, as I've ripened.
Absolutely.
I have to work twice as hard now to keep the same speed that used to come easy to me. So you notice your speed just slowly declines over the years. So I'm training a lot harder. I'm training a lot smarter as well. So I'm running fewer miles, but at a different pace. I've changed up my workouts quite a bit. The other thing I never do is sit down. So I have this policy where, from the moment I get out of bed in the morning until the moment I lay back down, I never sit down. Obviously if I've got to, go on a car ride or on a flight, I have to sit down. But other than that, if I don't have to sit down, I don't. So I'm on my feet all day and I'm basically just bouncing around on my toes and bending my knees. And that's one thing I do. The other thing, I've modified my diet to the point where I'm very refined in what I eat. And, I just kind of self-selected foods that leave me feeling energetic and healthy. And those that leave me feeling lethargic, I've cut from my diet altogether. So I've kind of, reined in on the foods I was eating to try to better manage inflammation and everything that comes along with a better diet.
Just interrupting this podcast for one moment to remind you that it is brought to you by an incredible product from BiOptimizers called Masszymes. It is a best-in-class supplement loaded with full-spectrum enzymes for digesting proteins, starches, sugars, fibres and fats. What it basically does is supercharges your digestion. Your poor old digestion has gone through the festive and holiday season desperately working hard over all the indulgent foods that you've been getting in there, and what it does is it gives you a bit of a helping hand. So now that we're into January, now that we're feeling it's time to focus a little bit more on our immunity and maybe on our gut as well, taking Masszymes daily helps top off your enzyme levels and replaces the enzymes your body is no longer producing, which means you can eat all sorts of delicious stuff and digest them quickly and effortlessly. I think life is too short to suffer digestion problems. It really is. So try Masszymes risk-free and see what improvements you notice. You can go to masszymes.com/Zestology. You can use the code Zestology10 for a 10% discount. And just a quick reminder that with all the BiOptimizers products, when you try it, if you don't like it, they'll give you a refund. which is sort of where the risk-free element comes in. And also for a limited time, they're giving away various other products on there as well. I've had a look on that site over the last 10 days or so. P3OM and HCl with selected purchases. So it's Masszymes.com/Zestology. And just give your gut a bit of a rest. As I say, life is too short to go through these digestion problems, and I think it is important to try out various supplements, track your progress, and see what improvements you notice. Masszymes.com/Zestology. If you're in the UK, you can use the code Zestology10 as well at BiOptimizers.co.uk. That's it. Back to the show. Do you think as you get older, I was having a conversation with my wife. We were talking about the Christmas party season. And I remember the story about how was it your 30th birthday? Where you ran all the way home and it took you a few hours?
Yeah, my first book, I talk about getting back into long distance running on my 30th birthday when I walked out of a pub, pretty drunk, and decided I was going to run 30 miles. That night. So I'll never forget. I didn't even own running gear, but I had on these comfortable, silk underwear, these silk boxer shorts, and I peeled off my pants, threw them down the alleyway, and I just started stumbling into the darkness. And 7 hours later, all up straight through the night, I made it 30 miles.
And the thing that we were discussing was we're very much looking forward to the Christmas party season. It's a fun time of year, and thankfully things are fairly normal here at the moment in terms of the parties that we've got organised. But in terms of, I can't deal with hangovers anymore. I can barely deal. I feel like my body's ecosystem is so delicate these days. If I go to bed an hour later, I'm knackered the next day. Do you think that's, talking about aging, do you notice that you just have to be a little bit stricter with yourself than you used to be?
With certain things, yes. Definitely, I've noticed that I value my sleep more. So I really try not to wake up by an alarm if I don't have to. I know when I have to get up for a certain meeting or call or whatever, and an alarm wakes me up, the whole day I'm not feeling nearly as energetic. So I've definitely noticed that. But I've also noticed that I'm better with sleep deprivation, and that I don't suffer jet lag nearly the way I used to. And I also don't feel pain. This might sound crazy. When I go to the dentist and he works on my teeth, I don't even have Novocaine anymore. I don't register pain the way I used to at all. So those things I think are benefits, actually.
Wow. So what is that? What's going on there?
I don't know. I've read a couple of theories about it. One of the theories is that, the neurotransmitters have just been overwhelmed over, the course of 2 or 3 decades of being so flushed with pain molecules. They just get numb to it. The other thing is that, your mind slows down, so you just don't register pain the way you used to. But I don't know. But, that said, I talked with my brother at length yesterday, and he's younger than me. He's a year younger than me. And he was talking about, how the pain when I sleep on one side, there's pain in my hip. And God, if I have 2 cocktails now, I can't, the whole next day I'm foggy, and, I've got back pain and this and that. And he's not a runner. And here I am, having run probably over 100,000 miles in total. And I have no pain at all. I don't have any arthritis or anything.
Did you say that's your brother?
My brother does. And
right, because you were saying because we had an interesting conversation when you came here to London about your genetics and your calves.
Yeah, I think like that? When you go to the village that my family came from in Greece, it's funny. All of the people have legs like a runner, even though they're not runners, and that's because they're outside hiking up and down mountains all day, farming and doing everything else. So I think that those kind of goat-like legs, he still has those, so that he's got that going for him. Yeah,
but genetics-wise, it's not just genetics. It's something else going on. You're taking care of yourself in a lot of different ways. The movement thing is very interesting, and I've looked a lot at movement recently, and we've instigated a policy in my company of having all walking meetings. So, I mean, I think firstly, I look forward to meetings a lot more. And secondly, I've noticed the creativity is a lot better. But I've noticed personally, there's something about my attention span that I just need to move. So I was always terrible at school, Dean. And I think it's just sitting behind a desk being told what to do just didn't suit me. And the more that I'm very jealous of you standing up now, for example. I've got a seat here and I wish I was able to move around a little bit as well. There's something about movement that affects the brain so positively, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, I have a saying, motion stirs emotion. And I think you just said that, you've experienced that firsthand. So, one thing I've noticed is that I can't sit in front of a computer and type up my books. So instead, I dictate while I'm running. I just go out on these 5 or 6 hour runs and I dictate into my phone. And then, I put in an earbud when I'm traveling and I just type up the notes. And that's how I do a lot of my writing. And I think that you'd agree, when you're moving, you have some of your clearest thoughts and your mind is uncluttered, where when you're at your desk, you got text messages coming in and, Twitter tings and everything else. So I do a lot of writing and a lot of deep thinking while I'm running.
Yeah. And I've certainly sort of dived in. What's that, Dean?
Yeah. We're not unique in that regard. I mean, Aristotle was notorious for, conducting his classes while walking around Athens.
Right. Yeah.
They were called the peripatetics, the wanderers. So it's Nietzsche said, only good thoughts come from movement. So there's a precedent of this.
And of course, I mean, it's sort of, in some ways, it's fairly obvious, isn't it? But unless you remind yourself constantly, I mean, you talked about, we will do so much on Zoom these days and virtually. If you don't get out and about, and if you don't have policies like walking meetings and dictating books, and I've just gone back to recording all the podcast intros for this podcast, walking around as well. I mean, of course, I look forward to it so much more. But there is I've dived in a lot to the work of Dale Bredesen. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's an Alzheimer's doctor. And at one point, he had the #1 book on all of Amazon for 3 days called The End of Alzheimer's. And he uses all natural protocols to help his clients either stop the spread of Alzheimer's or reverse the onset of Alzheimer's. And one of the things he's done a lot of work on is the link between Alzheimer's symptoms and moderate exercise, especially in older people. And it's absolutely astonishing how these Alzheimer's symptoms just get better when you start to exercise. And then I've started to notice when I do a lot of exercise early in the day, if I'm then doing something like recording a podcast, I'm much sharper as well. I mean, the link is real, isn't it?
I think it's undoubtable. And I mean, I think, I think chemically, I think it's looked at in that regard as well, like the neurotransmitters and, endorphins and a substance called the endocannabinoids, which are like cannabis, essentially, that we produce internally. And, if you were to inject someone with those same compounds, they get that same sort of blissful high. So I think it's, and I'm sure a lot of viewers or listeners right now to this interview are just nodding their head, right? Saying, oh, I've experienced it myself. Yeah. Yeah.
You just have to remind yourself to do it. And I sort of feel really sorry for my friends when they say, oh, it's such a nightmare. I always try and get away from my desk for half an hour during the day. And you think, that's not enough. It's got to be more than that.
Yeah, and I mean, now it's coming back online, but it was gone for a bit with the COVID restrictions. But when anyone contacts me and says, let's go have a cup of coffee or let's go have a beer, I say, no, let's go on a run.
Great,
because you have great conversations while you're running. I mean, these are not fast runs; these are fast jogs, if you will. But if you can talk, and you certainly have a lot of better conversations, I think, while you're moving than sitting in a pub. Well, sometimes in a pub, you have some good conversations too.
I'm quite sort of jealous of you in some respects with that, because I've always loved running, and I'm probably healthier than I've ever been before in terms of inflammation. But certainly when I was younger, I used to get dodgy knees from running. So maybe I need to give it another go, because it's not really something that's massively part of my workout routine now.
I think, running is the purest form of athletic expression. So if you just want the purest workout, go for a run. You don't need a lot. But I will say that, running footwear technology has advanced incredibly just in the last couple of years, in the last
Really?
3 years. So there are shoes now that people that you basically couldn't run anymore, or just stop running because they're so painful, that you can wear that are so cushioned. It's a totally different
Wow.
sport almost. It's the amount of absorption that these shoes take really minimizes the impact on a lot of your joints. So.
Okay. Well, I need to look that up. I mean, I know you're not sort of affiliated with anyone in particular, but where should I look for those shoes? Because that sounds pretty damn good.
There's a brand you'd probably never heard of. It's called Hoka. And, those in the know will say, oh, yeah, Hoka's, they're great if you like a lot of cushion. So, you could go and just look on Hoka.com. But all the footwear companies have now come out with shoes that are similar to Hoka. The other good thing about them, when you're wearing them, you're like 4 inches taller.
Great. Yeah. I like these, what have I got here? Ultra shoes, because they've sort of got they're a bit more cushioned, but they've still got the zero drop and the wide toe box, which I think is quite important in terms of trying to be as primal as possible. I know that's obviously a big thing for you as well. Are you into that?
Yeah, I love the Ultra. I was a big proponent of barefoot running.
Yeah.
I used to do it all the time on the sand. Like I live near the seashore. So on the soft sand, I really advocate barefoot running. And if you can find a big grass area as well. So I'm very much into the minimalist footwear.
Yeah.
That said, when I'm running a road marathon, I put on cushy shoes like these Hokas because
Hokas. Yeah.
I don't think we're engineered to run barefoot on man-made surfaces.
No. Well, I am very inspired to go and find some of those shoes and get out running again. Now, you mentioned diet, that you've sort of refined your diet a bit. What is the diet? What does it consist of now?
I like to describe my diet as if I can't pick it from a tree or dig it from the earth or catch it with my hands, I don't eat it. So basically nothing that's processed in a machine, nothing in a bag, nothing that's been refined. And that means no bread, no pasta, no, cereal. You can't pick a piece of wheat from the field and stick it in your mouth like an apple.
No.
It's gotta go through a machine. So I don't need anything that is overly cooked. Most of the food I eat is close to raw, but it's primarily from the sea. So there's a saying, I'm not a vegan, I'm a seagan.
A seagan, okay.
Food from the ocean, including a lot of basically they call them sea vegetables, but they're more like seaweed.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
That's probably the difference between you and your brother, isn't it?
I think some of it, yeah. I think that his diet, but I also think that that the repetitive motion of running in some ways strengthens your bones.
Yeah.
We know that weight-bearing exercise can have a positive impact on your bones and on your, I don't buy into the theory you only have so many footsteps in your life and everything wears out. Your body's adaptive, and you can induce positive changes by putting stress on it.
Yeah. And do you ever have ice cream? Come on, occasionally, surely.
People say, do you have cheat foods? And I don't know. I'm pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
I don't desire it. Like I know if I have some ice cream, I'll feel worse afterward. It might taste good, but it leaves my body feeling in a place I don't like the feeling. It's like lethargic. So I don't. People say when you walk by a donut shop, or a bakery, don't you go crazy? And I don't even miss that stuff. I don't long for it. It doesn't. I'm kind of immune to it.
Yeah. That's great. Well, I feel really inspired. All I want to do for the rest of the day here is go move as much as possible. I do, and I'm going to. Dean, what is one book that has inspired you then? And what would be one tip for living with more energy? Obviously, we've spoken about a lot of stuff already, but one book and one tip.
Wow. I mean, the one book I always will divert to is Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey.
Oh, wow. That's the first time that's been recommended.
Well, it's just for me, it's the foundation of life is Homer. So, I would always go back to Homer. That, to me, it's it's the first and the best book to begin with. And, one tip for living better is read Homer. They're timeless. Yeah.
I think I read that in Italian at university and it spoilt it forever for me. My Italian wasn't good enough to stick with it.
Try reading it in Greek. That's even worse.
Oh, yeah. We went to Greece last year and to Cyprus this year and loved diving into the Greek history, which was just everywhere. And even with a small child, found we were able to just really soak up the Greek culture and history so much. Just absolutely loved it. Brilliant.
You're speaking to a Greek, so I'm nodding my head in agreement. Yeah.
Yeah. We went to Kos last year. It's just a beautiful place. So much to do and see. And I know. Obviously, some of your books are set in Greece and everything else. Dean, thank you. It's so good to talk to you. What is the rest of the day? I know it's morning with you. Are you going to be going out for a run after this?
I am going to head out for sure. You've energized me.
Good. You've energized me as well. Look, let everyone know where they can find out more about you. And of course, the new book, which is out both in the US and the UK.
Just type in Dean in a web browser. And someone said I'm like the first Dean that comes up. So
the first Dean.
I've got a website. I'm on social media, all that stuff. Yeah, I'm not hard to find.
That's great. If you type in Tony Righto, you'll find me. I'm definitely the better. Dean, it's so good to talk to you again. I really enjoyed it. Listen, next time you're in London, let us know, okay?
Cheers from San Francisco.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Dean, and thank you for listening to Zestology. Love Dean. I'm going to look out those Hoka trainers as well, and I'll report back on that. I'm definitely going to try them out. This podcast brought to you by Masszymes. It's funny how many people have said to me how at this start of this year they are susceptible to gut problems and they want to focus on their gut a little bit more. And you can probably hear a car, and that's because I'm walking along the road recording this podcast out and about. And I think if you are one of those people, Masszymes is something you probably want to look into. I mean, what could be better than having a product in your back pocket which can help you break down food and help ease the load on your gut? And I think I mentioned this the other day, but I was out with my mate Dave, who's married to my cousin, and we had a steak, and it was quite a heavy late meal, to be quite honest. And it's just great when you've got digestive enzymes when you go out for something which, your gut's going to be working a bit harder when it's got a large ribeye in it, isn't it? And you eat late and then you're going home, getting straight into bed. That's a lot for your body to process. And with Masszymes, it can help you do it. And actually, if you head to masszymes.com/zestology, you can see a little video of the Masszymes breaking down a steak. So that's what I did. Anyway, masszymes.com/Zestology. If you go to the BiOptimizers websites, you'll find it there as well. And if you use the code Zestology10, you'll get 10% off the whole BiOptimizers range in both the US and the UK. That's it. Thanks for listening. See you next time.